Okay, we're going to start with military time, and you told me that it's 24 hours. What else can you tell me? Okay, it doesn't go 12 back to 1, it goes 12 to 13. Okay? Why might this be significant when dealing with graphing on an x and y coordinate? Yes, ma'am. Military time has a cycle. Okay, what's the beginning of the cycle? 0. Okay, what does 0 represent? Midnight. Excellent. 0 represents midnight, and this is going to be very important, okay? So, time 0 is what on an x and y axis? Time 0, what part of the coordinate axis is it? I just said time 0. I didn't say time and distance 0, I said time 0. What part of a coordinate plane would it be? It would be the y-axis. Time 0 is the y-axis. Why is the y-axis important in terms of what we've been studying? Which of the 4 items, what are the 4 items we've been labeling? Amplitude, phase shift, period, vertical shift. Which one is important to the y-axis? Phase shift, right? When I move my y-axis to fit the graph, that's a phase shift. So if I'm talking about 4 a.m., my phase shift would be x plus 4 minus 4. Which one? Y. Okay, so you've memorized that a negative is to the right and a positive is to the left, but I also taught you the reason why. So if I have x minus 4 and I replace x with 4 a.m., what's 4 minus 4? 0. That takes me back to my 0, to my y-axis. That's why it's opposite, okay? Are we good? All right, so this is going to be important for the phase shift. All right, let's move on up. And let's talk about A. What do you know about A? Amplitude. Okay. How do I find the amplitude? Distance from the 0 line. Okay, what if I don't know the 0 line? Max minus min divided by 2. Excellent. Okay. So what does max plus min divided by 2 do for me? It helps me find the 0 line. Which one of these is the 0 line? D. So D is my vertical shift. It is my 0 line, and I can calculate it by doing max plus min divided by 2. Okay? All right, what is B? The period. Now we're going to do this differently, okay? So the period is the cycle over the time, okay? Now, typically it's 2 pi, but that's why I added this piece here in the center. What happens if I only give you 3 points in order? That's half. So if I'm going around a unit circle, 1 point, 2 point, 3 points, it's half. So how many radians is that? Pi. So pi and how many points? 3 points. And if I go all the way around, it is 2 pi, and it's how many points? 5. That's going to be important today when we look at some problems, okay? Oh, yeah, sorry. Distinguish the 5 points. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and back again. Because remember, 0 and 2 pi are 2 separate, but they use the same axis. You with me? Okay. And 2 pi is a complete cycle. Okay, so that leaves me with just what? C, my phase shift, okay? And that is the distance off of the y-axis, okay? So if I'm talking in terms of a clock, midnight is 0. Also, if I'm talking in terms of time, if you remember when you were in algebra and you learned y equals mx plus b was your y-intercept, your starting point. So if I'm not at my starting point, that's when I have a phase shift, okay? It'll make sense in a second. All right, can someone refresh me before we go any further? What's the pattern for sine? 0, max, 0, min, 0. And what's cosine? Max, 0, min, 0, max. Okay, what if I want to, yes, ma'am? Cycle over time. Okay, so what if I want a reflected sine? How would I know it's reflected? Okay, but what would the pattern look like? 0, min, 0, max. Because the reflection of 0 is, and the reflection of the max is the min. Because it's perfectly symmetrical. Okay, good? All right. Now, if you would please turn your paper over, we're going to put all of our vocabulary into action today. Okay? And I went out of order with this class. I will put last night's homework answers up on the board. Sorry. Okay, so Tarzan is swinging back and forth on his grapevine. As he swings, he goes back and forth across the riverbank, going alternately over land and water. Jane decides to model his movement mathematically and starts her stopwatch. Let t be the number of seconds the stopwatch reads, and let y be the number of meters Tarzan is from the riverbank. Assume that y varies sinusoidally with t and that y is positive. When Tarzan is over water, it's negative, and when he's over, positive when he's over water and negative when he's over land. Jane starts and finds that when t equals 2, is 2 an x or a y? It's my x, okay? My time 2, that he is at negative 23, and at 5 he is at 17. Using one of the math vocabulary that we have done over the past week, please tell me the vocabulary word that would go with negative 23 or that would go with 17. Who knows? Max and min, which is which? This is my min, and this is my max. Excellent, good job. Okay, so what happens as I'm traveling from the min to the max? I go through what? The 0 line. So somewhere in here is my 0 line, okay? My 0 line. All right, let's take a quick timeout. Min, 0, max. What pattern is that? All right, John Marie, can you please tell, I know, I hate putting your all's names in the video, sorry. Madam, can you tell me, okay, why you picked negative cosine and not regular cosine? It starts with the minimum instead of the maximum, so it's reversed, it's flipped. Okay, so I'm going to write negative and leave some space and write cosine. Why would I leave space? Amplitude, okay. How can I find the amplitude from these two numbers? Okay, so the 0 line, the 0 line is the average. How do you find the average? You add and divide by 2. So the amp is not the average. Do you want to find the 0 line first? All right, we'll find the 0 line first. So negative 23 plus 17 divided by 2 is? We're finding the 0 line. Did I write it wrong on the notes? Okay, I flipped them, sorry. Okay, so what is this? Okay, so it'd be -6 divided by 2, which is -3. Sorry. Let me go back and correct the notes. I was rushing. Okay, so no, so the amp is, no, I wrote it right. The amp is minus. I was finding the zero line. Okay, good thing though. Thank you for checking my work. Okay, so -3 is the zero line. So you can either use the zero line to calculate the amp, or you could have done what with these two numbers? You could have done 17 minus a -23, which is 40, divided by 2 is 20, okay? My amp is 20. You could have also said, how far is -3 from -23? It's 20. Either way, so either a two-step process, either way works, okay? So, but this -3 wasn't wasted. Where can that go? At the end, it is my, what is beside, it's my vertical shift, so -3. Good? All right, so now what am I missing? Phase shift and period. Okay, so if the y-axis is when x is equal to 0, but I didn't start there, I started 2 away. So how do I show that? X, is it minus or plus? I'm hearing both. Okay, justify to me why you're yelling minus at me. Yeah, go ahead. Excellent. So what she was saying is, if I take this 2 and I plug it in, 2 minus 2 gets me the 0. It takes me back to the y-axis, okay, times 0, okay? And also I taught you the trick that my x is crazy, always says the opposite, what I say. All right. So now all I'm missing is the period. How many points do we have? 3 points. How much of a cycle is that? Half a cycle is how many radians? Pi. How long did it take me to travel pi? 3. Problem done. I traveled pi in 3 seconds, minutes. Did it tell us? Okay, well, I traveled pi in 3. We're going to go with 3 seconds. Because you're swinging on a rope. That's kind of fast, yeah? Oh, it does. Okay. All right. Okay, so here we go. All right, so I had a couple good questions. First of all, there was questions about this pi over 3. So think about it as I'm converting between radians and time. So the time was 6 seconds. So we're going to prove that this works, right? A full rotation is 2 pi, and my trip only took pi over 3, right? The pi's would cancel. So then it becomes 2 divided by 1/3, which is 2 times 3, which is 6. So a full trip was 6 seconds. When he did a full trip, it took 6 seconds, right? Half a trip was 3 seconds, and then another 3 seconds. Okay? All right. And then there was another good question I've already forgotten since I came up here. Oh, the graph. Thank you for reminding me. So I did put a graph at the bottom of the page. Sometimes people cannot pull the information directly from here. They can make a table and make a picture, and they do better writing the equation from the picture. So that is also a possibility. Good? All right, so I just handed you another paper with some practice problems. Let's do this one together. All right, so the average depth, average goes with what? The zero line. Oh, you guys are faster than some of my other classes today. Okay, the average depth is 6 feet. So my zero line is 6. It varies 2 feet. What are they talking about? My amp is 2. Great. And high tide is at 4 a.m. So 4 a.m. goes with, what's another word for high tide? My max. Awesome. Okay. So, and this happens every 6 hours. So at 10 hours, it's going to hit a min. And somewhere in between, it's going to hit 0. Okay. We have enough information. We don't really have to calculate the max or the min unless you wanted to, right? Okay. So my table starts with max. Who is max 0 min? Awesome. Cosine. Regular cosine or reflected cosine? Great. What goes out front? The amp, which is 2. Thank you for using the vocabulary. Okay. Now, what is my zero line? Where do I write that? At the end, my vertical shift. Great. What am I missing? Phase shift and my period. So, did I start at time 0? No. How do I reflect that? X minus 4. Okay, how much of a cycle is here? How much of a cycle is this? Half a cycle, which is pi. How long did it take me? 6 hours. Done. A full cycle would have gone all the way back to max. A full cycle, okay? So I've only gone halfway. Think of it this way. I went from a max to a 0 to a min. Oh, I'm at pi. So I traveled pi. How long? This is kind of to help me convert between time and radius, or the unit circle. Good? All right. Oh, I went a little too fast. I'm sorry. And I forgot something else. Yes, question. You sure? I see a head next to you shaking, saying that you're not fine. What do you have a question about? To do the min, yes, I would have done 6 minus 2. I just didn't write what the max and the min were because it's not necessary to write an equation. Yep. Okay, that's what was throwing people. I'm sorry. Yep. Okay, so the max would have been 8 and the min would have been 4. All right, moving on. Astronomers have noticed that the number of visible sunspots vary from a minimum of 10, so the min is equal to 10, and a max of 110. All right, so let's stop there. What can I use those two pieces to find? Amp and the 0 line. All right, 30 seconds. Find me the amp and the 0 line. All right, so what do you want to start with, amp or 0? Amp. All right, how do I find the amp? 110 minus 10 is 100. Divided by 2 is 50. So my amp is 50. What's my 0 line? 60. Which way did you do it? Formula, or did you just do 10 plus 50? 10 plus 50 is 0. If you did it the formula way, it would have been 110 plus 10 is 120 divided by 2 is 60. Okay, so let's start writing an equation. Where does the 60 go? At the end, so plus 60. Where does the 50 go? In the front. Okay, let's read some more. Further, this variation is sinusoidal, repeating over an 11-year period. Oh, 11 year. It does how much of a cycle in 11 years? Furthermore, the variation repeating, so completing a cycle every year. So it's going to be 2 pi over 11 because it does a full cycle, okay? All right, so if the last maximum occurred in 2003, well, guess what? I'm going to call time 0 2003. So do I have a phase shift? No. And my pattern starts with in 2003 it started with the maximum, so what trig is that? Cosine. Oh, it says write a cosine, so I should have put cosine on the paper. All right, thanks. Thanks for calling me out. All right, are we good? That was an easier one, yeah? Because I went ahead and said let 2003 be the start. So as long as it's the start, that's time 0. Okay? If they said, please write the equation from 2001, it'd be minus 2. But I can write my equation from anything, right? Okay. because I said time 0 was going to be 2003. So if the starting time matches, then there's no shift. Okay? All right, moving on. The Bay of Fundy is an inlet in the Atlantic Ocean, bounded by Maine and New Brunswick on the north and Nova Scotia on the south. It's famous for its high tide. At a dock there, the depth of the water is measured at high tide and again at low tide. The first high tide occurred at 3 a.m. and it was how high? 4 meters. And the next one occurred at 9:24 and it was low tide and it was 1.8. So, what I'd like you to do is the following. I want you to find me the amp and the 0 line. Okay, so I did 4 plus 1.8 and got 5.8 and divided by 2 and I get 2.9. That's my 0 line. Okay, this is high tide, but that's not one of our vocabulary words. So what am I going to write? Max. And here I'm going to write min. My 0, okay, I got my 0 line. My amp, how far is 2.9 away from 4? 1.1. Where do I write 1.1? Where do I put 2.9? At the end. Max 0 min is cosine. What am I missing? Phase shift and the period. My phase shift is going to be x minus 3 because I started at 3 instead of at 0. Excellent. Now, this is where it got real ugly. So somebody tried to tell me that from 3 to 9:24 was 6.24 hours. No. You should do 24 over 60, which is 0.4. So it goes through pi at 6.4. Now, I really don't like a decimal inside of a fraction. So, what is 6.4 as a fraction? So 6/4, right? 10 times 6 is 60 plus 4 is 64 over 10. 32 over 5. And because we want it in the bottom, I'm really going to do the reciprocal. So it would be 5 pi over 32 as a fraction. No. It's, remember, the ones I give you and the ones I test you on are always harder. That's why I get upset if you're not successful. Okay? Yes. All right. So that leaves you with 3 problems to attempt. If all you can do is find me the amp and the 0 line and do that much and tell me what trig it is, fine. We'll work to build the other pieces, okay? Just a hint on number 4. If I go from January all the way back over to January, how much cycle is that? 2 pi. But if January's 1, what's the phase shift? -1 because I didn't start at time 0. Cool? All right, so 4, 5, and 6 is your homework. Thank you.